What's up, everybody? I am Jesse, or GameOverJesse as some of you all may know me, and here with me, as always, except last week, is Daniel, our faithful co-host. Go ahead and introduce yourself for the people watching at home.
Welcome, friends watching at home. And if you're watching this live or not live, I appreciate you equally.
Yeah. Alright, so this is the Highlands Gamescast, I think, episode 11. We have some great news to get to. Ubisoft created a Wind Waker Game Boy Advanced demo that didn't get made, obviously. Nintendo Power returns, but only for Daniel and the rest of the people in Canada. There is no more DLC coming to Breath of the Wild, and our favorite Zelda websites, Zelda Informer and Zelda Dungeon, have finally fully merged together after the buyout from King Mossy's. And then we end the show, as always, with questions sent in from viewers like yourself from Patreon, Discord, and left in the YouTube comments of the past Zelda mailbag videos. And before we get started, we have some very important introductions for some of our Patreon sponsors for this video. We have George Martinez, Casey Willis, Rusty Caulfield, Robbie Morgan, Shadow to Us, Lovable Christie, Key of Time 15, Lunarium, and new Patreon supporters, Megan Neal and Tight Lipped Gaming. Thank you all for your support on Patreon, and for those of you who may not know, we also finally have some GameOverJesse shirts and jackets available, but we're going to be coming up with some other logos in the future. So if you want to
I like that shirt though. I want it. I will wear it every time I record if I get one.
Alright, so starting off our first piece of news. Since we were talking about it before the show, let's continue. Zelda Informer merges fully with Zelda Dungeon. Now, for those who don't know, before I had my YouTube channel, I used to write for Zelda Dungeon. Then I took a long break, started writing for Zelda Universe. That was when I started my YouTube channel, and then I made videos and a couple of articles for Zelda Informer. So I have experience with all three of the major Zelda websites. Daniel here has experience with Zelda Informer, and then Zelda Dungeon as well, but only because of the buyout.
Yeah. So when I came on board, I think it was shortly after they had merged, or shortly after that buyout had happened, and that's actually how Jesse and I became friends. Is that I was working on YouTube videos for Zelda Informer. I think we were both guests on the podcast for Zelda Informer with Nate and Alfred, and then at some point, you know, with various Twitter interactions, we just ended up. Life took us here, so, but we do have kind of Zelda Informer to thank for that, you know, and that was yeah. I don't really have experience with Zelda Dungeon except for I did used to, or still occasionally do check something on the guides for it. Usually I'll check something if I'm fact checking my own videos that I'm working on, but otherwise, like I mostly used to use Zelda Informer as a community site and news site before I even worked there. So
yeah, Zelda Dungeon for me is very special because it was what introduced me to the Zelda community. Whenever I was like first actively searching and looking for information on what would become Skyward Sword, it was originally known as just Zelda Wii. And I would look up a lot of information on it, and I would watch videos and everything, and then when I was looking at YouTube videos at the time that weren't nearly as great as the news videos on Zelda that you can find now, there's just texts on the screen, and from there I ended up finding first I want to give a shout out. It was Earthbounding64 was the YouTube channel that all inspired me to do my Zelda news videos, but also inspired McIntyre from McIntyre Productions to start his YouTube channel.
Oh wow!
Because he copied,
very influential.
Yeah, he copied the same format, taking in rumors, news, interviews, everything that you could find, and fan submitted stuff every week, and then putting it all into one video that would come out on a specific day at a very specific time. And he kind of took the entire pattern, or whatever you want to call it, the schedule from the one website, but he would add actual gameplay and stuff instead of actual words on the screen. And then talking to him was what influenced me into doing mine as well. So we both have that YouTube channel to thank, but because of that YouTube channel, I stumbled across Zelda Dungeon. And I started writing for Zelda Dungeon. After a few weeks, I was put in charge as news coordinator. Was the title, or co-news coordinator. It was myself and another who it was basically our job to make sure the news channel was like posting videos at a certain time every day, training new people that was coming on and everything, even though I was never really a great writer. So I was very thankful to Mossie's for that, putting the other co-worker and I in charge. But I think it wasn't necessarily because I was a good writer. I think it was just because at that time I was dependable. So but yeah, I was thankful for that. And then whenever I came back, I started writing for Zelda Universe, and then wanted something different from that, and Zelda Informer was really the only serious Zelda website that's on the same level as the other two. So I started writing for them, and then that was especially easy because Mossie's had bought Zelda Informer at that time. And then there was talking, like people talking back and forth in the background, the alleys behind the buildings, about like Zelda Informer. I think there was a couple of people that mentioned Zelda Informer was just going to go away, and then it was just going to be like Zelda Dungeon, and going to Zelda Informer would redirect you to Zelda Dungeon, and so that's where
that's
this
kind of
news
what's
story
happening
comes
now.
Yes,
I mean, they made this big post about the sites. Well, they posted it saying it's an update, but really it's the merging that is the content of the post. It's not really an update. It's just that all of the Zelda Informer content is now going to be on Zelda Dungeon, and Zelda Informer will just redirect you, and that's it. The site's basically gone, right?
So before this happened, Zelda Dungeon became primarily just dungeons, dungeon guides and stuff, and then it had its own editorial articles. But for news, Zelda Dungeon completely stopped doing news, and Zelda Informer was the site to go to for news, rumors, theories, everything else. But now they're merging into one super dominant thing, which I know people who 100% love Zelda Informer but dislike Zelda Dungeon. I know people like who are vice versa and love Zelda Dungeon and don't like Zelda Informer, whether it's because of a bad experience with some of the community at the different websites, or if it's just like a problem with the web layout, whatever. I'm not really sure, but people do have the websites they prefer. So personally, I see this as, like, right now, I guess it's too early to tell, but I don't necessarily think it's that great of an idea. I would try to have both websites putting out their own original news and everything, kind of almost competing with each other. Like for people who watch WWE, like SmackDown and Raw, where they're both the same thing, but they're in competition with themselves because there's no one else that like ranks up to their level. To whereas if you have two big websites that puts out articles or whatever, then when someone searches, you have twice the chance of someone clicking on it, as opposed to if there's just one and people see that it's Zelda Dungeon has this, the people who never really liked Zelda Dungeon are going to scroll down, go to Nintendo Life, go Nintendo, IGN, or wherever. To whereas if it was Zelda Informer, Zelda Dungeon, and then the other websites like IGN, you have twice the chance of someone clicking on your thing. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll see.
It might just be for ease, like on the staff end of things. It might just be easier to maintain one big site than to maintain two of these very popular huge sites, you know?
Yeah.
That's just my guess. Like, it just is probably to make it easier for them to run it.
Yeah.
But
and then
I don't know, like
financial, it may be easier just to like pay for hosting and servers for one website than for two.
But as far as running them goes, I believe that they had like different manager teams on the two sites, right? I mean, at least when I was there, it was like Nate and Darren were running pretty much just Zelda Informer, and they had nothing to do with Zelda Dungeon, except for that the two sites were associated.
Yeah, and then Nate,
Zelda Dungeon had its own team. This is before Nate left and went on to create Nintendo Prime, but
yeah, and then Darren left a few weeks after, I guess. And then we had
oh, sorry.
We had Andy.
Yeah, and Andy's taking on a lot there.
He's taking
Zelda
over,
Informer, but now it's Zelda Dungeon as well.
And he took over Darren's spot, right?
Yeah, and I mean he's doing great work there, and you know he mentions
this is the episode he should have been on.
This is actually he wrote the article explaining the merge, right?
Yeah,
and you know he seems to feel positive about it.
For the Zelda community, this is the equivalent of like just this past week when Disney bought Fox.
Yeah, that's pretty much what this is for Zelda fans.
Like you get the X-Men and the Marvel Avengers universe, and this time you get Zelda Informer with the Zelda Dungeon universe.
Yeah. But you know, I when I was working at Zelda Informer, Andy was like brand new. He had just come on like a month or two after I started working there. And it's funny to see him being one of the lead writers there now. But yeah, it's like he's been there for over a year now though. So, and he's been doing really good work there, and if he feels positive about this merge, then like I support it because I know that he has good judgment. But I don't know, it feels weird to me because it's almost like goodbye to Zelda Informer as a whole. I know they'll still have a social media presence in their own way, but it'll be different now. You know?
And the thing for me is that Zelda Informer and Zelda Dungeon, those are the perfect names for websites to where, like, if you want anything about dungeons, it's in the title. You know what to expect.
Yeah,
like
go there for Zelda Dungeons. You're stuck in the dungeon.
And then
go to Zelda Dungeon.
Yeah, and if you want news or rumors on something, Zelda Informer. It has Informer on it, so that you automatically know. Oh, Informer. They're informing me of all of the info, the news, the rumors, everything that comes up. So, yeah, and then like thinking back on it, when I used to write for Zelda Dungeon, and then even when I was writing for Zelda Universe, Zelda Informer, all three of them really, there were people there like me who liked all three of the websites. Like they would be friends with like whoever was in charge of the other websites and the people writing there. But then there was the few people who was just like, oh no, Zelda Informer, they suck, they're horrible, they steal articles and put their names on it. But then those same people at Zelda Informer, there was a few that would be like, oh yeah, Zelda Universe, Zelda Dungeon, they'll steal your articles. And for the longest time, it was the biggest, like there was those were like the small, like the minority of the websites, to where like the larger picture was, I remember for the 30th anniversary of Zelda's, I think it was Zelda Universe wrote this huge thing, like 30 years of The Legend of Zelda, and they would talk about all of the big things that happened from the first year of Zelda up until the release of Skyward Sword or the 30th anniversary of Zelda. And Zelda, I believe Zelda Dungeon and Zelda Informer would both like post like, hey, Zelda Universe is doing this huge editorial thing on every single article to help out Zelda Universe. So there was the people at the websites who were friendly and trying to support the other websites. But then there was the people that's just like, no, that person stole this and blah blah blah, and it's
yeah. And also there's a lot of people that they get, and I actually had a similar issue on the video side of things on YouTube, where basically people are like, you stole this person's idea for an article or for this video, and it's like,
keep
literally
talking, but I will be back in like 2 seconds.
All right. But literally what that situation was is that this is a news outlet, right? And we're just both reporting the same news. So, and that's not plagiarizing. It's just that we're both talking about the same topic, especially when it's news or something. Like, that's, I feel like not in any way plagiarism. I don't know how to better explain it, but yeah, I mean, it happened to me. Someone accused me of plagiarizing their own video, and I was like, dude, no. Like, this video, first of all, I've been working on this for a week, right? So there's no way I could have plagiarized your video you uploaded 8 hours ago. And second of all, it's just like, we're just reporting the same news. That's all it is. Like,
yeah, there was something very similar. HMK, which we're all part of the Chamber of Sages, as a lot of people know, but HMK, Zeltic, and I, on the same exact day, all posted the exact same theory video that talked about all of the exact same stuff. It was
what are the odds?
Yeah, it was on the, I think it was like the Shrines and the Guardians, and it was a big theory. And there was a lot of people on my videos. I was like, oh, you stole this from Zeltic. And then someone would comment and be like, no, he didn't steal it from Zeltic. Both of them stole it from HMK. But then there'd be comments on HMK's video saying the same stuff. Comments on Zeltic's video.
And the thing is with videos is that they take time. Like, we can't just whip these things up in an hour. Like, you know, like there's the video that just went up today, the new Zelda game video. Yeah, for 2018 and beyond. Yeah, so I don't know how much time you spent writing that, but okay, like, so probably a good while. And then I had the idea of that video for about a week. I think I took a day or two to write the script and record the audio, edit the audio. I sent it to you. Yeah, and then I took it took me a few days because of timing issues, but it took me probably a good 8 or 10 hours to edit. Yeah. And so it's like, we can't just whip these up in a day, guys. Like, it's not how it works. So when multiple people post the same thing on the same day, like, you can't just assume the worst intention. Like especially, I know Zeltic and HMK, and like their videos take quite a lot of effort but they put a lot of work into them, editing them especially. There's no way that it's like all in a day's work, everyone. You know. So if I ever do write a video, record the audio, edit the video all in a single day, then it's one of those times where like I don't get up unless it's to like go use the bathroom or get food or drink or something, and then I'll be there from like 6 p.m. until 10 a.m. the next day, because it takes... that's all in a day's work, but that's all of your whole entire days. Like that's all you did all day. And then when you're done with the video, you have to edit the thumbnail, you have to edit the description, the title, make sure you have a thumbnail that's not too clickbaity but gets people's attention, and like debate on, okay, there's 10 different titles this video could have. Like the one that we posted earlier could be what's in store for Zelda in the following years, or new Zelda games to come in the next 3 years, or Nintendo working, like all Zelda games Nintendo's working on. Like there's a billion different titles it could have. So like it was a debate for me, which sometimes I'll just ask you or people in Discord, like, hey, here's this video, what's a good title that you guys like, which would you click on first? So and also we've compared thumbnails, like which of these thumbnails is better, and then just trust us, guys. We're trying our best. So in the same way that, you know, we get similar comments like, oh, you stole this from Zeltic, and it's like there was a few videos where like, because Zeltic or HMK or McIntyre, Commonwealth Realm, Vortexy Gaming, there's like too many of them to name off, but just because like one or two of them would be in a video and they'd be like, oh, you stole this part from this person and you stole this part from this person, and I was like, no, we
we're friends. We're all a part of the thing. Like, they helped me write this video. They recorded the audio, sent it to me. Like, no one stole anything. Even like RMFH. There was a video with RMFH and Yuri of Wind, and people commented on it.
Where they guessed it?
No, like people would comment on it, be like, oh, you stole this from Yuri of Wind, or you blah blah blah. And then like the person who commented that on the video one time called me out on Twitter and was like, oh, you stole this from Yuri of Wind. And then like I just tagged Andrew, which is Yuri of Wind, and was like, would you like to explain? And then the whole situation kind of dive down, because they changed their story from you stole this to you didn't give any credit to. And I'm like, well, in every single video I have, if you look in the top right hand corner, you will
there's always
see
someone's
the
Twitter handle, or and also that again, going back to this, because it's the most recent example, the new video that went up, like there's footage from someone's Unreal Engine video, and it just says in the corner, like, source Kryzen.
Kryzen, who I've spoke to Kryzen, or Kryzinx, however you want to pronounce his name. I've spoke to him before, and he's okay with people using his footage, because not only does he allow, like, there's thousands of videos he could do a copyright claim on, but he also gives out the code, the source, everything that you need to play all of the stuff that he shows off.
I mean, really, if anything, it's also just promoting his own project, so like using his so going back to the topic, didn't mean to interrupt you, but in the same way that people comment way out of
in the same way people comment on our stuff, and it's like, you stole this from this person, I'm assuming it's the same scenario when people go to Zelda Dungeon and they're like, oh, they stole this article from Zelda Informer, and it's like, no, Nintendo just put out this statement on Twitter, so then everybody types the same thing. And when you're doing
just reporting the same news,
when you're doing an article on the same thing, and you're sourcing the same website, whether it's Game Informer, Go Nintendo, or whoever, or Nintendo directly, there's always going to be some similarities, especially if it's like Nintendo saying this game's going to be released on February 25th, and then someone types up an article, it's like, oh, The Legend of Zelda The Minish Cap 2 comes out February 25th. Then they'll be like, oh, well, this same paragraph is similar to this one. They must have just copied it and then changed it around or something. So I imagine it's like similar situations. But
I mean, this is not a new thing to it. You see that in like real newspapers too. There's,
real newspapers.
And there's times where my not to say that this I mean like physical newspapers, like not to say that these sites aren't real news sites, but I mean like I used to work in a coffee shop, and we would get the newspapers on our newspaper stand, and two popular newspapers in Vancouver here where there's the Metro and the 24. Those are probably the two really popular free newspapers. And there's been like numerous times where they'll literally have the same front page story. And it's just that they're reporting the same news. Like there's no way they're copying each other, because first of all, they have to print these things like the night before, so they can't even and they're printed at the same time. You don't get to see what the other paper's printing. But it happens all the time. It's just that's the news right now, and that's what they're reporting on. It's just coincidence, if anything. But
right. All right, so I think to wrap this up, Zelda Informer, a year or 2 years ago, apparently Zelda Dungeon was making so much money for Mossies that he thought it was a good investment to purchase his competition. So he bought Zelda Informer. The people who was running Zelda Informer aren't necessarily running. There are still people at Zelda Informer that used to be there. But people like Nate moved on to Nintendo Prime.
I think Darren's writing for a music news website now, actually. So like pretty big departure.
And there's no, which is really cool, because I've had a few of my favorite bands on here to interview. So
nice.
One of them, Escape the Fate, let slip their new album they were working on before anyone noticed. So I was like, I could just like not edit this part out, and then people will be like sourcing my video. But because we established a friendship at that time, I didn't want to do anything.
You don't want to, betray their trust.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I still need to work on that vlog where we all like went out to the gym and everything, the concert.
Yeah, that sounds like fun, man.
Yeah. Anyways, that was where Kayla, my ex, whatever you want to call her, broke her knee during the concert, so that sucked. Yeah. But then, hanging out with the drummer, he he didn't seem to mind. He could have been like, oh well, because we had plans to hang out later after the concert. So after he got off stage and everything, we were still hanging out. But where her knee was broke, she had to limp everywhere whenever we would walk from like one place to another. So he could have been like, no, I think I'll just stay on the tour bus. You guys, you're hurt, just go home or whatever. But instead he was like, I don't mind if we have to walk like a quarter of a mile per hour, then we'll do it. So it was really nice. Like he still wanted to hang out and everything. He bought us our breakfast earlier that day. Everything, it was awesome. So that video will be coming soon. But a lot of the people at Zelda Informer, like we were talking about, moved on to Nintendo Prime. We're good friends with those people. Darren apparently moved on to a music website, which is really awesome. That's a huge difference from Zelda.
Yeah.
So there are the people that's left that we're still friends with. We're still pals with Mossies and everybody. I think everyone, Nate.
Actually, I don't think Mossies knows who I am. Okay. When I worked there, I think I talked to him 2 times.
Okay.
And one of them was like asking like, "Hey, am I allowed to work at both Nintendo Prime and Zelda Informer?" and he was like, "Yeah, but you can't do anything Zelda at Nintendo Prime." And I was like, "Okay, well, damn it, I'd already sent Nate a video about Zelda." So
see, that's I mean, it's understandable. There's a lot of websites and stuff, like even at IGN, which is the biggest gaming website. Even if you go there, when you like leave to go do something else, or if you're working there and you try doing something similar, it's like, well, if you're making Zelda videos or whatever, why can't you? With IGN specifically, what I'm referring to is when Greg and everybody left to start Kinda Funny, it was like, well, if you're working here writing about video games and then you're making videos talking about video games, why couldn't you just do that for us and then we pay you the money that you would make doing it on your own? And
that makes sense. It's like pretty standard business practice, right? It's like moonlighting.
Yeah, almost, no compete. Like a no compete clause or something. Which even like sports has that, where like if you play for one team, unless it's like in the contract, if you leave, you can't go somewhere else for like 3 months or whatever it usually is. So I think everybody is still friends with everyone. There's like no hard feelings really between anyone. Nintendo
I don't
Prime
think so. And
is doing really well. They just passed 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. Zelda Dungeon has, I think, over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. They, on their Facebook, Twitter accounts, they have like a couple 100,000 followers. I don't really know. I think I want to say Zelda Universe on either their Facebook or Twitter has like 500,000.
Yeah, they do pretty well.
Yeah, so that's really cool, because at one point I helped out on their social media. So like whenever I would log in to post about an article, I'm like, 500,000 people could potentially see this.
That's that would make me very nervous.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel now. Like whenever I post a video, it's like 50,000 people are actually interested in what I have to say.
Yeah.
Almost 50,000. We'll be there in a week or 2. Anyways, I think that wraps up this. Is there any final things you would like to say about Zelda Informer, Zelda Dungeon? I really liked this discussion, because it's not just news like, oh, here's this info. Like, I'm actually passionate about this because for the longest time, like, I had a lot of respect and looked up to Mossies. I remember whenever I first talked to him, he was a teacher at a school, and I was like, oh. Yeah, like I think he left his teaching job.
1 sec.
All right. So we're gonna take.
Wait for 2 seconds, but keep going.
All right. So whenever he was doing that, like I would talk to him and joke around and be like, I guess when a student doesn't feel like doing their homework, they can just be like, hey Mossies, what's your favorite dungeon in the Zelda series? And then where he's so passionate, they'd end up talking about Zelda, or at least that's how it would be for me. I'm sure I asked it as kind of a joke, but I assume like a dozen people had asked him before that, so it was probably like one of those things like, oh, I've been asked that a million times. So yeah, but
Hey, I'm back. Sorry about that.
So
my son's just watching Pokemon.
Yeah.
And he was just having some trouble getting set up with it. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So did you hear what I was saying though?
Nope.
Oh, yeah. It was about like him being. Whenever I first started writing for Zelda Dungeon, he was a teacher. Whenever I found out, I would, I joked around whenever I first talked to him. It was like, oh, I bet whenever a student doesn't feel like doing their work, they can be like, hey, Mr. Mossy, like, what's your favorite Zelda dungeon? Or what Zelda game do you think should have a sequel more than the others? And then they would get caught up talking about Zelda as opposed to doing their actual work. But
that would totally work on me if I was a teacher. That would work on me every time.
He didn't really say anything about it. Like, he just like carried on the conversation, like he didn't really pay attention to it. But I assume that's because so many people had asked him before, and it's just one of those things that's like, I've answered that a million times. Your joke's kind of old, but he didn't want to be rude about it. So, but anyways, yeah, Mossy's great person. I can't really think of anyone better to take over both of the websites, unless it was someone like Nate or even Darren, who left. Yeah. But
I mean, Mossy's doing a really good job with Zelda Dungeon. Like I don't think he's having. Like I have faith in his ability to run the sites. So.
Yeah, apparently he did so well with a Zelda website that he made enough money to where he could quit his actual job. So,
wow, good for him. Honestly, good for him.
Did he quit? I don't know if he actually quit or not. I know people told me he did, but I never asked him directly. So
that's what I've heard as well, though. I've heard that he has quit his day job and just.
Sorry, what were you saying? Oh, you were just saying that you've heard that he has?
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well, but
yeah,
I might be wrong.
We didn't really mention the people at Zelda Universe, but the people running that website, really great as well. I think Jason is the official owner. He also runs a website called SquareNot, which is like Wikipedia for how to do this, how to do that. Like how to, I don't know, like the example that it uses is like there's dozens of different knots that you can tie, so he called it Square Knot because of like, how do you tie this type of knot? So it was something simple a lot of people would be able to catch on to, and then it kind of stands out as a website name. So Square Knot, it's simple. So but aside from him, he owns it. The webmaster that I became friends with was pretty cool. The news video host, Amanda, everybody. So it was also on the Australian version of Beauty and the Geek, which when I first seen, because I was a big fan of Beauty and the Geek, I was like, what? What is he doing on there?
He was the beauty, right?
Oh, no, he was there for the geek.
Why? Are you saying he's not beautiful?
He's very, very beautiful. But that's yeah, that's Cody though.
That's a topic on its own.
Cody, the webmaster. It's really funny because in the it has him doing geeky things, and then it has him doing like really beauty preppy things in the trailer, like the intro for it. So when every episode you'd see them all like in a big room smiling, jumping around in this like giant mansion while there's like colorful bubbles everywhere, and they're just like popping the bubbles. It's like I don't know.
Poppin' Bubbles is a wicked fun time,
Yeah,
though.
there was a lot of moments in it where I just laughed out loud because of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I actually know that person. So it's really great. Don't know if it's still on. It was on in the US back in like the early 2000s. And then he was on season 3 for the Australian thing, which I think it aired like 15 years after the American version. And then I think there's one for the UK as well. But I really like the Australian version because of the accents that they have. So it's like everyone sounds like not necessarily a geek, but they sound smart because of the accent. It's like when you see like a British professor and it's like, oh, he must be smart. Anyways, very, very off topic. I apologize, guys. But any final words before we move on?
Rest in peace, Zelda Informer. I love you. I miss you. So that's all I got.
Mossies, if you watch this, please do something with Zelda. And it would be cool if, like, when you typed in an article, I don't know if it would be possible to do this, but like if you typed in something, like something gets announced and then you type it in, if they could have that thing like I was talking about to where both websites show up for it, instead of having two completely different articles, if it would be Zelda Informer and then whatever the article was, like
but the same article,
like Minish Cap 2, not the same article, but in search engines and stuff, it would just show both websites with the article. That way it still doubles your chances. Like it would say Zelda Informer, Nintendo reveals release date for Minish Cap 6, and then it would be Zelda Dungeon, Nintendo reveals release date for Minish Cap 6. So
I mean,
and then either one that you click on, it takes you to the Zelda Dungeon thing. Like you were saying, if you click on the Zelda Informer articles, it takes you to Zelda Dungeon anyways.
It'll redirect. So
yeah,
I mean they'll be fine. They're gonna still do the same good work.
I wanted to say really quick, didn't mean to interrupt you, but my final thought is, I hope a lot of the people that spent years working on these websites, like I know Nate moved on, Darren has moved on, but people who may have worked and written for the website for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or even since the beginning, if there are anybody left at Zelda Informer that's been there that long, I hope they don't get sad about it, because they could look at it as like, I helped build that website. Like, because of me and the team that I worked with, that website got as popular as it is, and now it's just no more. Yeah. So,
although, you know, I know that Nate's not a part of the website anymore, but he did post something about that, you know, just saying like it's sort of a recap of his time there, and it was a bit emotional, but very respectable article that he posted.
All right,
just sort of a goodbye. You should read that. But
yeah, I wonder how long.
I wonder if talking about
what?
Sorry,
I was gonna say I wonder how long it's. I was saying I wonder how long it's going to be before the thought of like purchasing another website comes in his mind, because it would be really cool. I know he has Darksiders Dungeon. I think he had some sort of stake in the website gingame.net, which was like a general gaming news website. I didn't really know what a Gen Game stood for, if it was like a generation of games, like how the PlayStation 4 is a new generation, PlayStation 3, or if it meant general gaming, Gen Game. Instead of Zelda Dungeon, all about Zelda, Gen Game is all about like just games in general. But there was also Pokemon Dungeon, which is how I came to know Cody from Zelda Universe, because he couldn't work for a Zelda website, but he was buddies with Mossies. Actually just recently during Zelda Universe's marathon they had, where they played through all of the Zelda games just recently, like a couple of months ago, Mossies actually joined on there. So that's another thing where it's like there's a friendly relationship between all of them. But
that's good. I like that, honestly, because
when Cody well, whenever Mossy's had Pokemon Dungeon, Cody, I believe, was in charge of writing for that. And then when Darksiders 2 first came out, Mossy's also started a Darksiders dungeon because it was basically the same as Zelda, like just copying the Zelda formula with its own story and its own characters. So he had that. He may have some other websites that I don't really know about, but there are all of those. But it would be nice to see him, if he did try purchasing another website, it would be cool to see him get a website that was about just different video games instead of just Zelda, to have that variety. But that may be too much for him since he already has like pieces of all these other websites. But anyways, that's all I have to say about
I wonder
this.
if talking about these about Zelda Dungeon and Zelda Informer so much, I wonder if they're gonna write an article about this video.
Inception.
Yeah, they should. Andy, if you're watching.
Yeah. No, when I first started my YouTube channel, I reached out because I wanted to interview all of the like the kings of the different Zelda websites. So like Cody or Jason from Universe, Nate from Informer, and then Mossy's from Dungeon. And everybody agreed, but it was just like our schedules never lined up, where I would go a week or two without getting back in touch with someone, and then the only one that I really got was Nate, which I think he actually interviewed me as well, so it went both ways. And then of course someone from Zelda Informer, I think someone from someone from Zelda Informer, after Mossy's bought it, reached out to me to interview me about my YouTube channel. Zelda Universe was odd because while I was writing for them, they would also post about my videos. But then Zelda Informer and Zelda Dungeon would also post about my videos. And it would be like this thing that's like, Jesse from GameOverJesse, but also from Zelda Universe writes this thing. And then like whenever Zelda Universe would write an article, I would always make sure that I wasn't the one to write it, because I looked at it as like, oh, that's just self-promotion. But if the people in charge of Zelda Universe are like, oh, this video or this theory is actually interesting, let's get someone to write about it. So I would never really ask them to, but it was nice when it would happen, because then it's like, oh, they actually liked it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. So that was really cool. But I'm getting off topic again. I'm sorry, guys.
It's all good. I mean, I think we've talked about these websites for a while. We can probably move on to the other news.
Like I said, I love all of these websites so much that I could go on forever. But anyways, moving on to our second. The videos on this channel are funded by supporters on Patreon like you. If you're a fan of this channel and would like to join on videos, receive shoutouts, watch videos early, have your questions answered, or have your topic discussed on our podcast, please consider supporting on Patreon for these and many other rewards for just $1. Shoutouts for this video includes Link Use the Triforce, Rusty Caulfield, Lovable Christie, Give Time 15, Shadow to Us, Robbie Morgan, and Lunarium. I want to thank all of you for everything you have done to help support this channel.